Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 2025 Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival Nemo Talk series. My name is Suzanne Sanger. I'm the Executive Director of the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association, and I'm joining this call today from Skwxwú7mesh Gibsons at Howe Sound on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. The SCCA, together with our program partner Rhizome Up Media, is thrilled to bring you our 6th annual Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival. This year's events are funded by the District of Slhawt, Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition, the BC Government Gaming Grant, and numerous local NGOs and businesses and individual donors. We are very, very grateful to our supporters whose contributions enable us to offer all of the festival events and activities free to everyone who wants to join in. The SCCA is a charitable nonprofit society with a mission to protect and restore biodiversity on the Sunshine Coast. We work across a region of more than 2 million hectares of lands and waters from Howe Sound all the way to Hamasco in the territories of the Squamish, the Shishak, Tla'amin, Klahus, and Homolko First Nations. The SCCA is committed to reconciliation, to honoring and respecting the rights and titles of First Nations in their ancestral territories. We take inspiration and respect and education from the deep connection and that Indigenous cultures have always had for the lands and the waters and for all the living beings in their territories. And we really align with that interconnectedness, that consciousness of interconnectedness between all living beings, the natural environment, and the people. About World Oceans Day, this World Oceans Day was established by the United Nations in 2022 and is celebrated annually on June 8th. The goal of this day is to raise awareness about the impact of human activities on our oceans and inspire a global movement dedicated to ocean conservation. So every year, people from all around the world come together to share knowledge, celebrate the beauty of marine life, and advocate for the health of our precious marine ecosystems. So our Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival is our contribution to this global effort. And our hope is to inspire, engage, connect people and the oceans, to encourage them to take meaningful action to protect and restore the marine environment. Our 2025 festival program offers a wide range of content, including in-person and online film screenings, feature-length and short films, interactive citizen science and educational activities, and of course, our Nemo Talks. So without further ado, I am very delighted to introduce Ellika Cairns, our project director of the Howe Sound Marine Stewardship Initiative, for our 4th talk in the Nemo Talk series this year. Having grown up in North Vancouver and now living in Squamish, Ellika has a deep connection to this place and these waters. She holds a degree in physical geography and sustainability from the University of British Columbia. Ellika brings over 6 years of experience in marine conservation, community engagement, and environmental education to this work, including past collaborations with Watershed Watch Salmon Society and the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council. At MSI, Ellika leads the collaborative search for Slhawt. I don't know if I said that right, but I know you will tell us. This is a community science program that documents Pacific herring spawning habitat in Atkatsum. These little fish are vital to the marine food web and to cultural heritage in the region. Ellika will share the story of this vital work and how we can all support healthier, more abundant ecosystems. So welcome, Ellika. I'm going to invite you to share your screen and introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And thank you to the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association for hosting this talk today. I will just share my screen here, and then we'll get started. So Yeah, I'm pleased to be joining you today to speak about our Search for Slhawt, or herring spawn survey program. And if any questions come up throughout the presentation, please feel free to add them to the chat. And we'll also have time at the end to discuss and have questions. Great. So I would like to start off today by introducing the region that I'm speaking about, which is Skwxwú7mesh, or Howe Sound. And Skwxwú7mesh is one of 3 Squamish Nation place names for this region. And you'll see the region outlined in green on the map here on screen. Skwxwú7mesh is an ecologically rich marine area. It's also part of a internationally recognized UNESCO biosphere. And of course, since time immemorial, it has been the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, and also borders the Tsleil-Waututh, Slhawt, and Musqueam Nation territories as well. And today it's surrounded by communities like Gibsons, Squamish, Britannia, West Vancouver, and as folks who probably live on the Sunshine Coast who are joining us on the talk today, I'm sure you're familiar with Howe Sound as you pass through it on the ferry from Horseshoe Bay to Langdale. And so, as Suzanne mentioned, I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Skwxwú7mesh Howe Sound Marine Stewardship Initiative, or MSI for short. And MSI is a charitable nonprofit organization with an overarching goal to foster ocean stewardship in this region and to bring communities together in order to achieve positive outcomes for both current as well as future generations of life in Skwxwú7mesh. And so we do this through creating decision support tools, like, for example, the map that you just saw on the last slide, and also through research and monitoring programs, as well as education and engagement activities. And so the focus of today's talk is one of our research and monitoring programs called the Searching for Slhawt, or Herring Spawn Survey Program. So Slhawt is the Squamish language name for herring. And when I'm talking about spawn, I'm talking about herring eggs, which are also known as Skwxwú7mesh in the Squamish language. So starting off with the basics, herring are a small but very important little fish here in the Salish Sea, both ecologically and culturally. They're what we refer to as a forage fish or a bait fish. So they're a small schooling fish that serve as prey for larger fish and other animals. So herring spend a lot of their life out in deeper waters. So for example, off the coast of Vancouver Island. But in the late winter, early spring, they migrate to nearshore bays and estuaries. And they migrate here to spawn or to deposit their eggs. And so the female herring swims along the shoreline through intertidal surfaces. And she deposits her eggs onto things like rocks, rockweed, seaweed, eelgrass, wood, any hard surface that isn't going to move as the tide moves. And then the male herring comes in and swims and spreads their milt. And that's what can turn the water this milky green color that can sometimes be visible from satellite, from space, if it's a big enough spawn event. And so herring play a really key role in our coastal food web here. They're a food source for a number of different species, including large animals like whales, orca, humpback, as well as seals, sea lions, a number of different species of shorebirds, also different fish like salmon rely on herring, and even animals like bears or wolves will come down to the shoreline during herring spawn season to eat the eggs off the shoreline when the tide is low. And herring are also important culturally to Coast Salish people up and down our coast. So there are traditional harvest of both the fish themselves as well as their eggs during the herring spawn season. And many nations will practice setting cedar or hemlock or kelp in the water during the time of herring spawn for the herring to come and lay their eggs, and then for the nations to collect to eat them. And here in Skwxwú7mesh, the Squamish Nation celebrates what's called Slhawt, as the time when herring returned to Squamish territory to spawn. And so herring were once quite abundant in Acatsum, but as you might be familiar with, there is a really intense history of colonial industrial pollution within the past century that really impacted the health and biodiversity of Acatsum, including herring populations. And so things like commercial fishing, mine runoff, pulp and paper mills, logging, log storage, all contributed to this really large die-off of marine life in the region. But within the past few decades, there has been a lot of recovery and remediation effort. And so the marine environment is recovering, and we're seeing a lot of species come back, which is a really positive and hopeful story. And so we're seeing herring come back to the Sound, and following prey species like herring are also the bigger species like whales, sea lions, other big fish as well. And so in terms of a little bit of what we know about herring in the region, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans was monitoring for herring spawn in Acatsum up until about the early 2000s, but they stopped after that point because they deemed the population too small to be viable for commercial fishing, and so they just weren't interested in continuing to monitor. And so since then, the return of herring and documentation of their spawn activities has been primarily based in community efforts and volunteer efforts. And so there's this man named John Buchanan who is a community scientist, and he volunteered many, many hours of his own time on a boat in the northern end of Acatsum to document where and when herring were spawning from about, I think, the early 2000s to 2012 or so, or sorry, 2015. And this work helped to inform shoreline restoration activities, which were led by the Squamish Dreamkeepers here in Squamish. And then in 2019, Elder Bob Baker from the Squamish Nation shared about his knowledge about herring and encouraged kids at the Stewardship School, which is a school here in Squamish, to go out and try setting bows in the water and see if the herring would come and spawn on the bows and try to regain this connection to this important fish. And to many people's surprise, the fish came and they did spawn on the bows. And in 2019, this was the first time in over a century that Squamish Nation had been able to harvest Skwxwú7mesh or herring roe in their traditional territory. And the next winter, the MSI started to formalize documentation of herring spawn activity in the northern end of Acatsum. And this was all informed by these previous community initiatives. And so our program was started and still continues to be co-led in partnership with Squamish Nation Rights and Titles Department. And we have a few different goals that guide our monitoring program. So we're looking to document the spatial extent, so where herring are spawning in the northern part of Acatsum, and also determine the timing, so when the spawns occur. And then all of this data is helping us to build a baseline of herring activity and of knowledge and education about herring in our region. And it helps us to see change over time as well. And the data is informing decisions in the region. So for example, decisions about shoreline restoration or assessment about potential impacts of shoreline development or log storage in certain areas as well. And our program is split into two parts. So we have boat-based surveys, and this involves our MSI staff and Squamish Nation staff who actually get in the water and they snorkel to look for herring spawn. And we do this at more remote sites that are harder to access, mostly on the western side of the Sound. And then our other part of the program is where we have a team of volunteers that help us to do surveys mostly in the Squamish estuary, and they do that via walking and also paddling. So our Squamish estuary surveys involve volunteers, and they monitor, it's about 7 or 8 different sites across the Squamish estuary, and they're out at least once a week between February and early May. And so our volunteers go out at low tide, which is when they can walk the shoreline, and then visually inspect things like grasses and rockweed and wood and other structures to look for signs of herring eggs. And then they report their findings to us with an online form that they can just access on their phone. And then for our boat-based survey team, accessing the more remote shorelines in Howe Sound, they snorkel survey and then also just look off the boat onto the shoreline looking for signs of herring spawn. And here's just some examples of what herring spawn actually looks like. These are all a little bit zoomed in. Herring eggs are very, very tiny. They're just a couple millimeters big. And so looking for herring spawn, you really have to slow down, especially if it's not a dense spawn event. Sometimes here in Acatsum, we have pretty sparse spawn, and so it can just be a few eggs on a piece of grass. And so you really have to slow yourself down and look close and pay attention as you're looking and surveying for herring. And one of the things that actually points us to herring spawn in the area is wildlife. And so if we see lots of birds or lots of predator activity like dolphins or lots of seals and sea lions, it's a good sign that there are forage fish like herring or maybe anchovy in the area. So our efforts so far have been focused on herring spawn activity in the northern end of Acatsum. The map on the left here in the red color, you can see our survey sites. So these are the places that we survey at least once a week from February to May each year. And at the northern end, you can see our sites in the Squamish estuary, and then on the west shore around what's now the Woodfibre LNG site. On that side of the sound, those are more remote boat access sites. And then on the right, you can see that we've started to expand our surveys a little bit this year into the southern part of the sound, and that's been through a partnership with BC Parks Rangers, who are also monitoring at the different marine parks in Howe Sound. So that's Porto Cove, Halkett Bay, Apodaca Park, and Plumper Cove. And in terms of what we're finding, 2025 is the 5th year of the program, and we're starting to be able to see some trends in the data. We're also starting to be able to predict when certain spawn events might happen based on some research that we're doing in partnership with someone at UBC and looking at the tide cycles and herring spawn activity. And then all of this data year over year is assembled into a report. And so each report goes in depth into that season's results. We share maps and different stories about what happened throughout that herring season. And then all of our data is also available on the Marine Reference Guide, which is our online interactive map. And so this is a tool where anyone who is interested to learn more about our data, maybe that is developers or decision makers in the region, or just anyone who's interested in seeing where herring are spawning, you can go to our map here and see all of our data online as well. And so even though the spawn events that we see here in Acatsum are not as big and not as dramatic as the ones that you might hear of happening on Vancouver Island or other parts of the coast, there are a lot of reasons for us to be collecting this data. And there's a lot of ways that it's been impactful and important. So like I mentioned earlier, we're tracking the change over time. And the data can be used to inform decisions and also help with restoration efforts. And the program has also helped and supported the Squamish Nation in their reconnection to herring through traditional food harvest and also through time out on the water. And then also through all the time that our volunteers spend walking the shorelines of the Squamish estuary, we're hoping that this helps them grow connection to place and to the land and to the waters here, and also to connect with other like-minded people as well. And I do want to mention this work really does take a community. And so I want to take a moment to recognize all the contributions from our partners, our sponsors, supporters, all the volunteers, and our staff and contractors who all make the program possible each year. It really is a community-led effort. And if monitoring for herring spawn sounds like something that you'd be interested in doing, next herring spawn season, we will of course be looking for volunteers again in the Squamish area, but we might be interested in also having some monitoring going on around Gibsons for herring spawn. The map on screen here in purple, those are reports of historic herring spawn that has occurred in the region. So this isn't recent data, but data from many, many years ago, I think mostly from DFO surveys. So there are documents of herring spawn in the region, but we don't have any volunteers in the Gibsons area right now looking for herring. So if you're interested, I would welcome you to reach out. And my email is on screen here if you're interested in helping us monitor for herring spawn. If you would just like to learn more in general about the program or see our reports or our data on the map, you can visit our website that's at the top there. You can also scan the top QR code there. And then we also post lots of updates and pictures about herring spawn and stories about the season on our social media, and then also on our e-newsletter as well. So lots of places to connect and learn about herring. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, I think we have some time for questions.
That's amazing, Ellika. It's so cool to see just how far this project has come and like how many sites you guys are monitoring and just like how many different people are involved. It's really cool to have watched this grow over time, and it's neat, like starting with John Buchanan's work. You know, he was just this guy all on his own doing his thing, and now it's become this really inclusive program. And I have to say too, you know, like we can I ask you to stop sharing your screen so we can see your face a bit? Thank you. Like the idea of the Squamish Nation putting the bows into the water, and you know, for the first time in really long time being able to capture eggs is it's part of the Howe Sound recovery, right? It's part of the recovery for everybody, including the people who've been here for so long. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat. We'll start with Aaron Balfour is asking, is there some reason the herring spawn higher up the sound as opposed to further down?
That's a good question. We don't necessarily know. It might also be that that's where we're looking. I wouldn't be surprised if we're missing herring spawn activity in other parts of the sound, in particular, probably some of the even more remote sites or on some of the islands. We're probably not documenting all of the spawn in the region. But it's possible that they're sometimes attracted to freshwater outflows. So maybe they like around the Squamish River that there's a little bit more of like the fresh water. But yeah, we're not 100% sure.
Yeah. We've got a hand up from Sarah.
I just remember, I think it was last year or the year before, there was a feast right off the beach called Franklin Beach. And there were seals, you name it, seagulls. What else? Oh, yes, lion. What do you call those big lion?
Sea lion?
Sea lions, yes. And so I don't know. I'm pretty sure that was herring spawning because it was the beginning of spring. But I'm just wondering, would that mean there were eggs or there were herrings themselves? So that was right off Gibson's.
That was probably the fish themselves, because things like sea lions and seals, they typically go after the fish versus I don't think they go after the eggs. But it could be herring that were coming into shore and in shallower waters to spawn. And that is also often when they get eaten. because they're in these bigger groups and they're in shallower waters to deposit their eggs. And so that's also when we see a lot of other marine life and birds come to eat them. And so, yeah, during a spawn event, there can be a lot of wildlife activity.
So I'm sorry, sorry, I missed your presentation, but I guess from the pictures that you had of the herring eggs, they attach to the seaweed.
Mhm.
So any eelgrass or any type of plant where they would be fixed and will just start to grow, and then they could become herrings themselves. So does that mean that the spots that you have been monitoring, they have plenty of plants? And so I know in Gibson's they have implemented a regulation where boaters are not allowed to anchor their boat offshore or off the marina. They have to have this special anchor that goes around that will not disrupt the plants. So would that mean that eventually, because that's in use in the last 2 years, that there would be some plants and there could be some herrings,
Yeah.
laying their
So
eggs?
herring will want to put their eggs on a surface that doesn't get swept away with the tide. It's okay if it moves around, like stationary seaweed would move around as the water flows. But those surfaces could be human made as well. We actually see herring spawn on things like docks or shoreline, manufactured human shoreline, or creosote covered wood. Different structures that people have placed in the water as well. So they like the hard surfaces, but there is some research that shows that there are certain surfaces that are better for the herring eggs. So that is things like seaweeds, eelgrass, rockweed, kelp. It keeps them a little bit more moist and helps the eggs survive and develop properly. So yeah, in Gibson's or any area where there is more marine vegetation is beneficial for herring. If they're coming to spawn in that area, then they have a healthy substrate to spawn on for sure.
Thank you for your answers.
We've got Sarama saying we do have regular spawning events here in Gibson's every season. I wonder, Sarama, if I could put you on the spot and invite you to sort of share a bit about that with Ellika, because what I'm hearing is that there's an interest with MSI to possibly do some projects down here and some monitoring. So maybe this information will help you figure out where.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I think Leanne Johnson also has been following this and quite a few other people as well. But we've had some very impressive spawning events and you can see it on the shoreline. And of course, when they're spawning, it's the usual circus show, with the sea lions and the birds and everything. And even the orca will come around, going after the sea lions. And as Sarah mentioned, I think I was down there filming one event at the same time I saw her there. So yeah, it's a regular event around here, and I think it's all over the coast, really. But like you say, Ellika, that sometimes you find what you're looking for, so if you don't happen to look at one site, and you can't, as a volunteer-based organization, you're certainly not, you don't have the resources to cover everything, obviously. But yeah, there have been some really, really good spawning events here. And other people have mentioned anchovies. Yeah, also anchovies, just like on Bowen Island and so on. So I just wanted to mention that. And when I was working on a film, I went down to the seashore and set up a little chamber to film the eggs. And I filmed them actually hatching out. And I got some really great macro shots. So you could actually see like they're about, like you mentioned, about 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter, and you could see the hearts of the embryos beating inside the egg, which was
Wow.
pretty incredible to see that. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that, yeah, these, even though not everywhere we're watching them, but yeah, it's happening. Yeah, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. Yeah, I'm not surprised that there's other herring spawn activity around that we haven't documented. Yeah, maybe if you're
Can I
able
say
to
one
send
more
me.
thing? I
Yeah.
don't know, a lot of people aren't aware, and it really is, I find it really disturbing that there's this industrial fishing by people like Jim Pattison, who, simply don't have enough money, but they take out a herring that has a lifespan of maybe 20 years, and they'll strip its eggs out and it's dead. The fishery or the harvesting that First Nations have practiced, they harvest the eggs using kelp and branches and so on that you mentioned, and that can go on year after year after year. Industrial fishing doesn't do that, and it's really not a sustainable practice. And it's dismaying to me that this is even allowed. I just find it ridiculous, because these fish have the opportunity to spawn continuously over many years instead of just being harvested once. So I just thought I should put that out there too.
For sure. Yeah, the commercial fishery that operates mostly off the coast of Vancouver Island. There's been calls for a moratorium and for a pause in that fishery to let herring populations recover. And here in Howe Sound, there hasn't been a commercial fishery for herring for many, many, many years because there isn't a population here to support commercial fishing. But yeah, those fish that are coming into the sound here, they're very likely also fish that live a lot of their life off the coast of Vancouver Island. So it's possible that the fish that are coming into Akatsum are still impacted by commercial fishing elsewhere. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
I'll sign off now.
Ellika, there's a couple other questions in the chat that sort of relate to this. Thank you, Sarama, for your good questions and for making that point. So what you just said was that, the fish, they travel a long way, and they could be affected in different places. So I'm curious, three things. Maggie was asking, how long from egg to fish? What is the lifespan of a herring? And then the sort of follow-up to all of it is, how does your project, or can your project support, like protections or, inform decisions about fisheries?
For sure. Yeah. I'll start with the life cycle. So herring eggs typically take between 10 to 14 days to hatch out from when they were deposited by the female fish. And the time that it takes for them to develop and hatch is dependent on water temperature. So if the temperature is warmer, they will take less time to develop. And if the water is colder, then they'll take a little bit longer. But between 10 to 14 days. So we do actually have a little bit of time to document the eggs between when they're deposited. And so that's why we're checking once a week at least in our sites, because then we have a good chance of seeing them. And in terms of how long a herring live, yeah, I think I've heard that they can live up to 20 years. I think that is less typical to see herring of that age now.
No, it's
But they can get that old. And throughout their life cycle, I think they will spawn typically between 5 to 7 times. So unlike, for example, salmon, where they just spawn once, herring will spawn multiple times throughout their life cycle. But that depends on how old they get to. And then the last question was about how this work can inform commercial fishery or restoration efforts. I mean, for sure, for restoration efforts, the work that John Buchanan did, for example, informed restoration that the Squamish dreamkeepers did around an area called Squamish Terminals. that had a lot of creosote covered pilings. So creosote is a coating that is put on wood to preserve it in the marine environment, but it's highly toxic. And so any herring eggs that are deposited onto creosote covered wood won't survive. But herring like that surface, or they tend to seem to like that surface because it's clean. It doesn't have a lot of plant growth on it. And so they go, oh, wow, look at this nice surface for me to put my eggs on. But they won't survive. And so this research has been able to inform restoration efforts and show that herring are spawning on these surfaces that are not healthy for their eggs. And then, for example, the Squamish stream keepers wrapped those pilings in a protective wrap that then prevented the herring from laying their eggs on that harsh surface. It gave an alternative surface. So that's one way that the data could be used for sure. It also can inform, for example, if there are log booming practices or shoreline development happening in a certain area, that we have data that shows that herring use this shoreline, that can help to inform restoration of a certain area, or potentially to show reasons why development shouldn't happen in a certain way on a certain shoreline because herring are using that shoreline for their eggs.
Yeah, this all sort of links back to the different conversations we've been having over the last couple of days around, and yesterday we were talking about like sandlets and surf smelt and where they are in the intertidal and the near tidal. I get those confused. Diane Sanford is our forage fish person, and you know, we like one of the things that's happening on the Sunshine Coast is we're moving into like community land use planning at the sort of lower coast-wide scale. And so the idea of, you know, understanding what the development on the waterfront properties, what the impacts of that has on the larger food chain in the marine environment, because, you know, it's just one of those disconnects that we have as humans. So you were talking earlier about like when you have volunteers and people are going out like once a week, they are getting more connected. They are talking about and sharing that information in the community and raising that awareness, because it's that, you know, like what you can, they're so tiny, what you can't see. It's hard to think about, you know, what are we doing to it and how can we make sure that it's protected, but it's just connected to everything. Like all the other creatures are coming to eat the herring. So yeah. There was sorry, I get all excited about the interconnectivity of all the things. There's another sort of comment in the chat about the supposition that if the herring can't survive on the creosote piles because of the contamination, there's no apparent risk of bioaccumulation.
Yeah, I suppose not in that case, because the eggs just won't survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they become deformed, or yeah, they just don't hatch properly in that case. So I guess it wouldn't lead to herring and bioaccumulation.
But are there other things that lead to bioaccumulation, like for the fish themselves? Maybe not the eggs, but
yeah, I suppose there probably is. I'm less familiar with how that, yeah, what sources would impact herring.
I think about, you know, when we talk about Howe Sound, there's this legacy of industrial impact from the mine and from, you talked about all the things, like there was mercury in the chemical plant, you know, and it's kind of it's this beautiful miracle of nature that at Catsum is recovering after, you know, all this work to clean it up. But there's a lot of sort of missing pieces of data and information about, you know, I don't know what's left, what's the legacy of what's in the water column.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that just speaks to like the need for ongoing or continued different research to see if they're healthy to eat. Same with like different bivalves or crabs, like what the levels of contamination are in these different species. Yeah, there's definitely a need for more testing.
And did you touched briefly on some research projects that you might be working with academia on?
Yeah. So that's a really exciting expansion of the program, and we've had a number of different folks reach out to us for ways that we can collaborate and different research opportunities. So a couple of ones I'll share about are with UBC. One is with a PhD student at UBC. Her name is Virginie, and she is investigating the impacts of climate change on herring and herring egg development. And so she has come out for the past couple of years now, come out on our boat, and she's been able to collect herring eggs for her research. And she's looking at different factors that influence their development. So, for example, if the herring were the eggs are on rockweed, or if they're on a different surface, and what happens to the development of the egg, depending on what surface they're on. Also, impacts of temperature, as well as dissolved oxygen and light pollution, I think, is her current topic of investigation.
Oh, that'll be fascinating. How long till we get the data, do you think?
I think we could probably share some preliminary results by next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so amazing. I mean, there's like, I don't know if everybody's totally familiar with the MSI project, Ellika, like the mapping and all the different layers. Maybe you want to just talk a little bit about like that tool and how much information is in there and the opportunity that it kind of, provides to build those connections and relationships and research projects and that kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah. So you're talking about what we call the Marine Reference Guide, which is the map that I showed on a few slides during the presentation. And so this is a online, free to use interactive map. So anybody can go onto our website and have a look at this. And it has over 750 data layers and documents about Atkatsum, focused on the marine environment, but it does also include information about the watershed. So that data includes anything from, it does include our herring spawn data, or for example, about different ages of trees, or shoreline development projects, or shipping routes, dive sites, all sorts of different things. So it's multi-sectoral, and it is meant to be a tool for decision makers in the region to have this single place of information, or of a lot of the information that we have about the sound. And then it can also be used by anyone who is interested in learning more about this beautiful place and the animals that we share it with, and about the water. And maybe you're interested in the geography or the species, or Squamish Nation place names. Lots of information is available on the map. And I see Suzanne just linked it there. So you're welcome to check that out.
Yeah, it's such a cool tool. I've watched this develop over the years with the Atkatsum gang, and it's just been so exciting to see like just all the different types of information that get put in there too. Because I think one of the neat things is that, I can post in that if I want to. Right. So if I'm a citizen scientist, or if I'm just somebody who's like really keen and taking photographs of, maybe I see some herring eggs, I can go and I can literally like click on there and share information. So it makes it a really cool tool. Like throughout this conversation, we had people posting about where they've seen herring spawn on the coast. So we've got ourselves a little list going. And I do really feel like encouraging folks, especially folks like Sarama, who's got wicked photography equipment and video equipment, like check out the Marine Reference Guide website. And you can go in there and you can upload things, and that contributes to the awareness of where the different sites are, and that would actually help. I think it would help MSI start to piece together where you might want to start doing spawning surveys on our side.
For sure. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have a look at the places that are listed in the chat here. And yeah, maybe I'll have to do a bigger call out for some volunteers to come and walk some shoreline with us.
Yeah. And let me see here. There was a recent Nature of Things. We've got a couple more comments in the chat. A recent Nature of Things episode titled Shared Cities highlighted a project to clean New York City Harbor using oysters in large cages, and they would like to see that here around marinas and perhaps Howe Sound.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to look for the article. Yeah, there's all sorts of very interesting nature-based solutions to the problems that we've created, right? Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that before. Intriguing. I'm wondering, well, we have a little bit of time left and not too many questions here. And I'm wondering, Ellika, should we share the screen and show people the interactive map and how they can post in there? Because I feel like, one of the big things that we do with this, or we intend to do with these Nemo talks is like show people how they can support the conservation initiatives. And this is kind of, it's a pretty good one, and it's pretty easy if you know how to use it. But I think it can be intimidating if people have never seen it before and don't really know what we're talking about. So do you want to try that?
Yeah, for sure. I'll pull it up on screen here. It does slow down when I'm running both the Zoom and the map at the same time. So I apologize if it takes a little bit longer to load and walk around the map, but I'm just pulling it up on my screen here. There we go. It's just loading. I'll run through a few of the different tools that are at the top here, just the basics. But like I mentioned, all our data is focused on at CATSM or Howe Sound. And so it is usually clipped to the green boundary here. That's our focus area. But if there's a data set that you're interested in, I'll show you. You can click to learn more information about it, and it might very well be available coast-wide. So we've just clipped the data to our region, but it might also be applicable elsewhere. I'm going to pull up our map layers list here to start with. So once this loads, you'll see that we have, there we go. We have all these different categories for types of data that you can look at. And so I won't open all of these up because I think it'll slow things down, but you can open up, for example, under ecology. And then if you're interested in looking at herring, we'll go under fish. And then we'll find our herring spawn data here. So you could click that and it will pop up once it loads the pink line here in Squamish. So that's our 2024 herring spawn data. And so as you can see on this list, we have information about a number of different species. We have whale watching data for a number of years, which is pretty interesting to look at. And then we also have more so human use and infrastructure data. So that could be things like certain tenures to do certain activities on different parts of the land or ocean, marine infrastructure, some of the historic pollution in the region. And then we also have physical geography or physical data on the map as well. And so if you're interested in maybe looking at the seascape, or we have layers that model rocky reefs. We have the glass sponge reef areas marked out, rockfish conservation areas. Yeah, lots and lots of different data on here. And if you had a data set that you were interested in seeing on the map, that is something that we can add on the back end. So if you send us an email, then we could add your data set for the region. We can turn that into a spatial file and have that uploaded to the map. And then if you are familiar with using ArcGIS, you can also upload your own data on here too. And so that would be through this add data button that's at the top. And then you can actually upload your own data and add your data to the map as well. Yeah, so that's a very, very quick intro to the map. We do also have a tutorial video that goes into more depth about how to use the map. And so I can find the link for that and put it in the chat as well if you're interested in a more in-depth tutorial.
That's great. Yeah, we'll put that up on the page for the Nemo talk after, so people can just really easily access it when they watch the talk. They can get the links. That's awesome. I think it's, you know, it's just like more and more, I think people in our community and the conservation community are looking for those small ways that their, you know, their love of nature and the ocean can also be put to use in a good way, right? Like we all love to go out and enjoy nature and see the beauty of it, but it needs help. And so, you know, if we can add our little bit of help along the way, then it's more hopeful. Gives us something to hope for. And truly, I mean, the work that you guys are doing is really, it's lovely and hopeful and science-based. And I have a lot of hope for, you know, the usefulness of the data that you're collecting in the decision-making processes around, you know, impacts. I do know too, like one of the projects that we're very concerned about is wood fiber. And so we saw, you know, quite a bit of hullabaloo around the work that wood fiber was starting to do in the spring, and recognizing that they weren't allowed to, that they, you know, the government won't allow them to do certain types of work during the spawning season. So, you know, it's not ideal. We don't want that project, but at the same time, at least they're being, you know, it's being enforced that they're not doing work during a time when it would affect the herring spawn. So that's a good thing. Oh, we have a last question from Sarah.
You mentioned there's a tutorial how to use the map, the interactive map, but is there a tutorial on how to collect and report data? There must be like a procedure. Like,
yeah, specifically for herring spawn data, we do have a data collection form. At the moment, it's tailored to the northern part of Akatsum, so for our volunteers in Squamish. But I think we could create one that is more general, or that is specific to Sunshine Coast and to Gibson's area, if we're expanding the program and to be able to collect data there as well. Yeah, there would definitely be a data collection form.
and my other comment was about a book I recently read on from an ecologist who lives on the island. Her name is Dr. Grants, Jennifer Grants, and it's called The Medicine Wheel, and I forget the second title. But basically, it goes along to what you said, that to involve the community. If you want to make some sustainable changes and bring awareness, this is the way to go, is to involve people. And maybe, I don't know if you have any partnership or any connection with the Marine Center here. It could be useful because I know the public market is really a place where a lot of tourists go, and also some community members here on the Sunshine Coast, something to the effect of herrings and how important, you know, that sentient being is here in the marine wildlife.
Yeah, Blue Act Marine Society and Tide Pools Aquarium. We do connect with them, but that's a great idea to have maybe a little bit more herring focus, or ask if we could have a presentation there, or have a poster up that shares a little bit more about herring in the region and their importance. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Especially with school children, you know, these young human beings, education is key for, you know, the long term and the generations to come, because it's a generational work you're doing. And thank you very much for all the work you're doing.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for your question.
I'm gonna say one more. It's this that kind of thing where like we're gonna keep building and talking, and another thing is going to come up if we don't sort of bring it to a close. But the one last thing I want to say is that, we do have, so Diane Sanford's been, leading our forage fish sampling project for years and years and years and years. So we have a community of folk on the coast who are very much interested in and committed to, monitoring forage fish, which is what we're talking about right now. So we have a community of interest here, Ellika. I think, it's totally time, and I'm excited that you guys are thinking about something on the lower coast. And so, definitely tide pools and the aquarium is a great resource and a great group to work with. And we too are more than happy, obviously, to send the word out and bring people to another talk or to a little workshop or something like that on how to do what you're doing and get something going on the lower coast. So yeah, and there's quite a few of them, like Leanne and Maggie and others in this group are the forage fish people. So that's great. Yeah. Right.
We found you.
You found us. That's wonderful. Okay, so yeah, it is 1 o'clock, and so we're gonna sort of wind this up right now. And I just want to, obviously, a huge thank you to Ellika for all your work, and the MSI team and the whole Howe Sound gang. You guys are, you're doing the long work to make sure that the great Howe Sound recovery keeps growing. And this is just, it's beautiful and so appreciated. Even though, the Sunshine Coast is a tiny little piece of it, is Howe Sound. It's the gateway to our whole community, and we are very grateful. And really, I just want to express gratitude too to everybody who came to the talk today and is here to listen and be involved in this good work. It's wonderful to have you. And, sort of another shout out to our funders and our sponsors and all the groups that are working with us in the Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival. Our last talk of the Nemo Talk series tomorrow is sort of zooming out to have a big look at all of the different topics that we've explored this week. We'll be hearing from Alicia Elgert from CPAWS BC about the province is developing what they call the coastal strategy, the coastal marine strategy. And the goal of that is to help protect biodiversity, address climate impacts, and improve how our coasts are managed through at the provincial level. So it's bringing everything home, I guess, together. And let's see, today we've got this amazing program. The Ocean Festival has so many things going on. Today, actually, this already happened. It's probably happening right now. Half Moon Sea Kayaks and BC Parks are doing a beach cleanup, a kayak beach cleanup on Thormanby Island. So for all the folks who are doing that, thank you. And I hope you're having a lot of fun. To Saturday, we've got Paddle for Pride. Sunday, we've got Marine Stewardship Initiative is doing a Howe Sound beach cleanup in Squamish on the ocean front. As well, Tide Pools Aquarium is doing a citizen science talk in the morning. And then we have our big World Oceans Day celebration on Sunday, World Oceans Day from noon to 4 at Mission Point Park. So and of course, we've got all these beautiful feature films. If folks haven't seen them online, there's so much content. Our film programmer, Billy Carroll and Rhizome Up Media have just created this amazing resource on the website of, films and advocacy groups and initiatives that are just, if you want to find a way to get involved and do good things for the ocean, visit the website, and you can't miss. There's a lot there. So with that, I'm just going to say again, thank you so much, Ellika, and everybody for coming, and happy World Oceans Week. Thank you for all you do.